Ejiwa Ebenebe, also known as Edge, is an illustrator of fantasy, opulence, and whimsy whose gorgeous work earned her a cover on the famous ImagineFX magazine. We've been friends for years, and I'm deeply inspired by her, especially after knowing her story and the struggles she had to face to get to where she's at today. You can see more of her work at artofedge.com, but for now, please join us as we talk about building a successful freelance illustrator career from scratch, powering through depression, how Final Fantasy led Edge into art making, and the story behind Edge's choice of focusing on painting Black people. Hi, I'm Anya, and this is Make More Art, a podcast by Etcher, meant to inspire you to keep on creating. Now let's hear from our guest. Edge, please tell us about the time that you realized that art was your calling.
So I've always had a creative bent. Like I've always loved doing creative things. I remember being a really small child and like making little clothes for my dolls, and like my sister and I would come up with these elaborate stories and we'd take them on adventures, and I'd build like houses and whatnot. So I feel like that's always been a part of my life in some way. But it wasn't really something that I thought, oh, I want to make a career out of until I think around my early teens when I first saw Final Fantasy, The Spirits Within, and I know people don't like that movie, but it was really such a turning point for me because it was the first time I'd ever seen something like that, and it really like moved me to want to build bigger worlds and like be part of a team. Now that has changed, like that initial interest has changed, but that's what took me down the path of like wanting to become a better like artist, and then eventually moving into studying 3D film. And then after that, deciding, oh, wait, actually, the part that I like is the illustration part, right? I like the more molding of my own worlds on this canvas as opposed to like being part of a huge team building one small part of that, if that makes any sense.
It does, yeah.
So I would say that was like the catalyst really for.
And tell us about the path that you took up until today. So you're a really great freelance artist, and I want to talk about your art in just a second because it's beautiful. And I want you to tell me more about it, but how did you get here?
So I feel it's so hard for me to like explain this because I feel like so much of it has been just really fortunate circumstances that I'm really grateful for. But I mean, it started with me growing up on a small island in the South Pacific. Like, I didn't have much access to art supplies and art education and whatnot. We had internet, but our internet was so slow. We were still on like 56K modem, like literal modems dialing up. Yep, exactly. Nostalgia. And like just trying to go on YouTube whenever it came around was like, that would obliterate your whole internet bill. So it wasn't really possible for me to do that. So, I mean, I would like go on like DeviantArt and just basically trying to grasp what I could from like the tutorials that would load because loading took forever. And I found conceptart.org back when it was still a thing, and that also like reading all the information on there and like trying to piece together what a career looked like was kind of what was helping me to figure out, oh, okay, so this is what I can do, this is what I can't do. And as I grew older, it became time for me to, like, you know, finish high school and decide, okay, well, what are you going to do with your career? And I didn't want to go into, like, STEM or anything like that, even if it was a feasible path for me to take, because it just wasn't my interest. So I decided I wanted to pursue a creative field. And so we were looking at schools, and I was considering going to school for fine art to hone that part of my career, but I was still very interested in 3D work, right? And I felt like I could learn, because I had been focused so much on 2D and fine art up until that point. I felt like I could learn how to do that on my own, but what I couldn't learn really, because I had been struggling with trying to do that as well, was the 3D aspect. So it felt more beneficial to me, like if I was going to go to a school, to go to school for that interest that was really perplexing me and proving very difficult for me to get a grasp on, because compared to like having pens and pencils and paper, and even just like Photoshop, the 3D pipeline is so much more complex, right? Um, and so and resource heavy, quite frankly, and complicated. So it was a field I was very interested in. And do you mind if I divert for a bit?
No, please do that.
Okay, so like you might notice I'm talking about 3D right now, and I don't do 3D currently, but I feel like it was the pull towards it was so strong for me that I felt compelled to go and do that. And though it's not necessarily what I focus on now, it's had a noticeable impact on how I see my illustration work. And so that to me was an important point on the path towards my career now. So I went to school for that, and it was really great. I enjoyed the experience of, being around other students and whatnot, and, being part of a team. And it really helped me clarify what I wanted and what I liked and what didn't work for me, in terms of career structure and, like, working in a studio versus being independent. Now, following that, it's a bit more blurry because, well, life hits you hard sometimes. And
Oh, really? I've never noticed that.
I know, right? Like, I feel like it should be very easy, but I mean, what I know. But I unfortunately fell into like a deep depression, which lasted a few years, right?
Oh, crap.
Like the depths of that. The depression has always lingered to some capacity, but it was like if we're talking about rock bottom, yeah, that was below that. So it kind of that period is kind of hard for me to gauge because it was such a blur of just it was very dark, and it was definitely not a place I ever wished to return to. But I mention that because it is an important factor in like the fact that I did not really progress in my career at that point. I was like trying to pull myself together, but it was difficult. So it was a bit of a pause, and I wasn't even like considering any of that because, quite frankly, you're just in survival mode at that point. And
Yeah. Your health first. If you're not healthy, if you're not happy, how can you do anything, right?
Exactly. And like even to that extent, it was more like you're literally battling despair. So
God.
yeah, I mean, it's really a painful place to be in. But fortunately, I was able to get out of that. And I mean, I won't go into details. But I was able to come back out of that and be able to like see the world in a more like a clearer light, as in my brain, without my brain lying to me as much as it was before. Yeah, more objectively. And I was able to pull out of that. So thanks to help of a lot of people. So from there, it was like, okay, now I was battling with this feeling of like, I've gone to school for 3D, but 3D is not really what I want to do anymore. Not in that capacity. Exactly. Like this, really feeling like guilty. Like, oh man, I spent all this money. My parents' money. Like my parents helped me go through the school because they believed that it was what I want to do, and it was. But here I am, and it's not exactly what I want to do. And also, quite frankly, I felt like I was so out of it at that point because of the distance between the finishing and the end of the depression that it was like, can I even do this anymore anyway?
Where were you located at the time? Were you already in Vancouver?
That's a good point. Yes, this was in Vancouver. So I finished my school in New Zealand. I was there for I think a year or two after that, in a whole other circumstance. And then after that, I came back to Samoa, which is where I grew up. And then we moved from there to Vancouver like a few months later.
And what year was it when you moved to Vancouver?
2012.
Okay.
Yes.
So you've been in Vancouver for 8 years.
Almost 8. Yeah, it's 8 in I think October. Yeah.
Okay. Please proceed.
So I was, we have to make money because we have rent to pay and whatnot, and I had been like trying to pull through that, but it's now that I was finally able to see clearly again, obviously I gotta make better progress on this. And I think that's about when I came to work with you, and like that, the freelance illustration part took kind of a backseat for me at that point. I wasn't really ready to, because we had this opportunity to work together and whatnot. I felt like, okay, well, this will take care of the bills for now. I don't really want to I don't think I was really ready to face illustration being my career at that point for
Okay.
multiple reasons. So when I went to work at the Old Academy, um, it kind of like I had the opportunity to not focus on that, and I felt like it wasn't the right time for me to do that.
So what were
Multiple
you
reasons.
working on? So it was not
Um,
art related, but it was an art school.
yeah, I was doing like I started off doing like editorial stuff, so
Mm-hmm.
reviewing posts and sometimes helping to write posts. Um, and then it kind of shifted from there into managing website
Mm-hmm.
things. So I was working on like the back end of like building stuff for the academy and maintaining the websites and helping everybody run like the
Keeping the
pipelines
website
for
alive and online because not a lot of people do that, but you're not also an outstanding artist. You're pretty amazing with software and coding and copywriting.
Oh, thank you. I really don't feel like I'm a good copywriter at all, but I
You
appreciate
are.
it.
Oh, I worked with you on that for a long time. I know. I know what I'm talking about. Don't call me a liar.
Thank you so much. You're not a liar. But yeah, like working on the back ends of like the pipelines for managing payments and managing um yeah, like you said, the very basic but still coding for websites and whatnot was a very helpful a very helpful experience that tapped into like my love for more technical things, at least for a time. Um, and so, I mean, in the background, I was working on my art, but I was really happy to just be able to focus on my art for myself and
Mm.
just focus on improving my skill set because I wanted to. And I felt like I did have a goal eventually, I think. I think I always knew that I wanted to do it in some professional capacity eventually,
Mm-hmm.
but it just didn't feel right at the time. I didn't feel confident enough, and I didn't feel like I also wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
It felt restrictive to me at that point. So, and then, as we got more involved with OA, the Academy, it became less of a thing that I could really like sink my time into
Mm-hmm.
because I just didn't have the time or emotional space for it.
Yeah, you were maxed
So
out.
yeah, very. um, so I think it was just growing in the background, and I was just thinking about where I want to take my career because I'm getting older, heading towards my 30s. It's like, is this where I want to be for the rest of
Mm-hmm.
my life? And I was just trying to think about what I actually wanted that to look like. I was able to go into therapy, which is very helpful in helping me like figure out things that were holding me back
Mm-hmm.
and understand what I actually wanted for myself and not thinking just about what other people expected me to do
Mm.
or
Great
whatnot.
point. Yeah.
Yeah. As a caveat, my parents have always been supportive of whatever I wanted to do, so that's always been such
Wow.
a help. But
Not a. You
some
have to be a doctor.
exactly, and I'm so grateful. I think a lot of people with immigrant parents and like Nigerian parents understand that that can be a very weighty expectation on a lot of us children. But fortunately for me, my parents have never had that perspective, and they've always been like, if this is what you're pulled to do, then we should help you achieve that because clearly
Wow.
that's what you were meant to do. And I'm so grateful for that. So fortunately for me, that pressure wasn't coming from them. It was more like my own putting that pressure on myself because I felt like I wasn't worthy or I wasn't doing enough,
Yeah.
right? So that was part of what I was working through in therapy is like those negative self beliefs and how to push past those. So yeah, so I went through therapy and things became clearer and clearer, and I realized, this is no longer the right fit with me for me. With This is no longer the right fit for me with the OD Academy. I started basically thinking about how to push out of that, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's when it started becoming more and more difficult to ignore that no, I'm not in the right place. And I've been working on building up my illustration skill in the background to a point where I think able to where I think it was able to compete professionally. And I felt like, okay, I think everything is aligning enough that this is the time for me to go. And I mean, to be clear, over this period of years, I had been doing like very minor, not freelance, like one or two freelance things here and there, but like contributing to like collaborations, right? For
Mm-hmm.
like zines or gallery shows online and stuff like that. So I wasn't inactive, but I wasn't like actively seeking out. freelance work either,
Mm-hmm.
and I also didn't have much space for it. So yeah, so I in the last year before leaving OA, I had been building up relationships with other clients and
Mm-hmm.
like starting to take work from them. I had been fortunate enough to be able to start trying my hand at editorial work, editorial illustration, and that really was so helpful, not just in gaining that experience, but in like building up my skill set further.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to I think that that was really a huge year of growth for me. That was 2018, I believe.
Okay, a couple years
Yeah,
ago.
2018 up to 2018 and 2019 overlapping.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in that because I left OA last year, 2019,
Mm-hmm.
early 2019. So yeah, so at that point it felt like, okay, this is what I want to do. I think I'm finally ready to I believe that I am able to make this work, and I have enough of, in my savings that I can safely do this at this point.
Yeah.
um and there are other circumstances that contributed to that decision, but ultimately it was everything collided, and it was kind of like, okay, well, let's just do this. It's time to figure this out, right? And I mean, this is where I feel like fortune, honestly, it's just been a very fortunate last year, because coming right out of that,
Mm-hmm.
I got commissioned to do a mural for the city of Vancouver, and that was both amazing in terms of like the opportunity to help to represent something so important for our community, as in the Black community in Vancouver,
Mm-hmm.
and also like to help me keep going financially for like the next few months. And I mean, other people had been coming to me to commission me um, for personal illustrations and like stuff for indie book covers and whatnot. And it's been amazing, honestly. I'm really shocked. So coming out of OA, it was almost like I came out of OA, had a bit of a breather and like a small breather, and then was right back into working for freelance illustration.
Wonderful.
I'm really grateful. And I mean, I'm slowly getting to the point where that's becoming more and more feasible, but like the start of my career has been helped so much by the fact that I've had such a support system that has enabled me to do so. So yeah, the last year has basically been like a lot of things happening, and then this year has been another explosion of just things I can't talk about, but things I'm very excited to share.
Oh my
that uh
goodness.
that I'm like completely blown away by. I'm really grateful that it has turned out this way. So we'll see how it goes in the next year, but that's been the path so far, towards getting here.
Wow. Yes, and it's like, so I love your story because you tirelessly work towards your goal at your own pace, whatever that meant. Sometimes you had to slow down, sometimes you even had to stop, which is incredible, but you never gave up. And
No, thank
you didn't throw yourself, you didn't jump in like head first. You always had a safety net or, baby steps and make sure that everything was in a position that if everything failed, you wouldn't be, living outside on the
Yeah.
cold. So that's hard work.
No, thank you.
That's hard
I
work. Go ahead.
I really appreciate that. Because like we're my mother and I are caretakers for my father. Like he had a stroke a while back,
Oh,
and he's not able to take care of
yep.
himself anymore. So I always know, I'm very aware that one false move could land us in a very difficult situation. My mother is working so hard on herself to do what she can, and it's yeah, like I did not want to take any unnecessary risks because of my own like selfish desires to like make it in freelance. So it was a difficult decision, and it was one I thought about for a very long time. It was like
Mm-hmm.
just trying to figure out how this was going to be feasible, and if it was the right time, if it could even work. And I mean, I was partially like it was a combination of deciding, but also circumstances forcing my hand into
Mm-hmm.
at the
Oh,
specific time that it happened. Yeah.
yes, destiny.
Yes, to do this. And I'm grateful that I had the ability to make that very careful decision towards
Mm-hmm.
into this path, because I mean, I could do something else, but I'm grateful that I'm able to do this for now anyway.
And in terms of your art, so any if anyone glances your Instagram, it's very clear what you love doing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
not even commenting on the art style, just guys, go and see for yourself. But the themes, you're always focused on Black people. It's something that resonates with you, really speaks to you. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that? How did you come to that conclusion that that was your focus?
Yeah, so that was like a growth thing for me. So when I was very young and I was painting a lot, just drawing my own like little original characters and whatnot. My mother came up to me one day and she was like, "You never draw Black people.
Oh,
Why is that?" And I was like, I never thought about it because I just never saw them in my media. I was
wow.
drawing the
Oh my
images I was
God.
seeing. Yes, I never saw Black people in the media that we were seeing in the shows we were watching and whatnot. And so it was like a kind of a light bulb moment of like, why am I not drawing myself or my family or people who look like me as well? Why am I defaulting to drawing just white people? And there's nothing wrong with doing that if that's what interests you, but I had to examine why the roots of that subconscious action. And I came to the realization that it was that was the mental picture that I had built based on the media that I had access to. And the media did not involve people that looked like me. So as I grew older, that became more and more of a painful realization that so much of what I love, like fantasy, fairy tales, whimsical things, are not people. They don't see people like me when they make those things,
Oh
right?
my God.
They're like, I'm just out of mind, sometimes outright hated, and it's a difficult realization to come to, that you're living in a world that does not value you.
Oh my
And
God.
yeah, it's a difficult thing. Um, it's like I try to focus on the positive because otherwise the crushing despair is kind of like overwhelming a lot of the time. But realizing that, I realized that, wait, I have the power to do at least a very, very small thing here. And I can create those images that I would have loved to see when I was growing up. I can create images that show other little girls and other Black women and other Black people that they're valued and they're beautiful, and that someone sees your beauty and sees your wonder and appreciates you, right? And you can belong and exist in these fantasy worlds that you love so much too. So that's kind of become my focus. Is I don't have any, like, I'm not against drawing anyone else. I simply only have a limited amount of time though, and I feel like other people aren't going to do this, and they don't have to. Like, I don't believe that. I'm not trying to force other people to draw us. If you don't want to, then quite frankly, I'm not interested anyway, because I want to be supported by people who actively care about, me
Yep.
and people like me. So for me, I just focus on, like, well, no one else is going to do this. So I want to do this, and
Boom.
this is what I want to create. So yeah,
There's a lot of
that's.
power in that. So that's how
Oh,
you
thank
came
you.
to that real. Wow, I had never
Yeah.
asked you this before, and
Oh.
this is mind
Yeah.
blowing.
Thank you. It's an intentional choice, and it's an intentional choice in that I feel like like I said, I have a very limited amount of time on this planet, and this is so dear to my heart, and it's so important. Like, I think people who see themselves constantly on media don't understand how important it is to see yourself. And this is not to say that you can't relate to people who don't look like you, because obviously you can. I've been doing it my whole life, but it's a hard dynamic to explain to someone who does not experience it,
Oh
that
yeah.
yes, you can, but there is something about being able to see yourself and see people valuing you as you are in their world, in these fantasy environments, that is so powerful and can really shape your self-worth and your view of your place on this planet, because we're all in this together, so yeah.
Wow. But this is so powerful. I have
Oh, thank you.
great. Okay, something that it came to mind right now is when I interviewed Stephanie Law, so that's episode number 4. She and I talked about how she created her career out of doing what she loved the most. So people go to her because of the work she does. So that's why people hire her. So she only works on what she loves the most. She loves what she does. People pay her for that. And I see the same thing happening with you. You have your unique style, you have your unique themes, and correct me if I'm wrong, the magazines, the clients that you get, they go for you for the exact same kind of work, right?
Yes, that's exactly right. And with like the most recent surge in work that I've been getting, consistently people have been saying, I just want you to do your thing. Like I just do what you do. That's what we want to pay you to do. And that's been the career path I've been trying to forge, whether it's through stubbornness or whatever. I have a very specific vision I'm trying to share with the world, and I feel I don't feel inclined to break out of that. I feel like it's important for me to stay focused on that. And so I've been working to build that vision distinctly in my portfolio, so it's very apparent what I'm trying to do, and that's the appeal of hiring me, is this unique perspective that I'm offering.
Boom. And what do you say that made you grow the most as an artist? So to get to the level you're at today,
like skill level, wise. So I feel like I haven't really followed a lot of the the advice or rules that people have suggested for improving. And I'm not saying that those are not useful. Quite the opposite. Definitely. I mean, do your studies and whatnot. But for me, having fun, honestly, I feel like it's been the biggest the biggest thing for me, because I just love what I do so much, and I love what I do to the point that I'm constantly thinking about it. When I'm not drawing, I'm analyzing things and thinking about how I can incorporate them back into my work. I'm observing objects and thinking about how I can paint them better. And I mean, I guess that is part of the study part, but the reason why I'm able to do that so frequently and like literally on a daily basis in my mind is because I love it so much. I just love it. So I feel like for me, finding the thing that I love, and it took me a long time. I mean, I used to hate painting with a passion. Yes, I couldn't stand it. I wanted to do it because it would achieve the results that I wanted, but I could not stand it. And I was fighting so hard to figure out why I did not like this and how I could create the work that I wanted to without literally resenting the process. So yes, it took me years. I spent years battling that and like trying different things and just running it through my brain, like what exactly about this don't I like? What exactly about this is frustrating? What is the friction, etc., etc. I liked line work a lot, but it wasn't it by itself. There was something about wanting to combine lines with painting as the aesthetic I was going for that I just, for whatever reason, I could not figure out what the combination was that I was going for, and that caused me a lot of friction that I was dealing with. And then there was the aspect of just literally not enjoying painting. And in hindsight, I'm realizing it was a combination of factors. It was lack of skill at that point, the frustration of being a beginner in painting was there. But then it was also a frustration with the results that I was getting, as in it was not achieving the goal that I wanted. And lastly, it was the literal experience, like as in the tools that I was using were frustrating for me because they did not feel intuitive or natural to me. So honestly, at this point, I firmly believe that your tools do matter. They aren't like gonna break it for you. You can make artwork with anything, but finding the right tools can be a huge help in advancing your skill set, and just because it's the comfort, like feeling comfortable with the process that you are undertaking to create work, because learning in and of itself is already difficult. Removing that friction can help so much in terms of just being able to further hone in on what the actual issues are that
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to improve. So yeah, like finding the right program, Clip Studio. I love that program so much. Clip Studio Paint. Finding the right brush from the Friendon brush from friendon.com, the chalk painter tool, that painter chalk tool, that tool. I use it almost exclusively for painting at this point, and it just did everything that I expected to happen when I
Yeah.
put my brush on the canvas digitally, and that took away a bunch of that friction too. And then just learning painting techniques in general, that also obviously helped because then that friction of like I literally don't know what I'm doing also went away.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then at last, figuring out the combination between line and painting that I was aiming for
Mm-hmm.
was like I think like the turning point for me as far as figuring out that whole thing. So I feel like that combination of elements is what led me to be able to create the work that I create now.
Yeah.
And fun is what drove me through learning all of that because ultimately I was doing that because there was something that I really enjoyed that I was trying to create, and that kept me going through the struggle of like, because I loved it so much that I felt it was worth it to fight through all these struggles to achieve the
Passion.
goal that I was going for. Exactly.
Passion carried you.
Exactly. Um,
Any
yeah.
parting words to our listeners? Any words of encouragement before we sign
Um,
off?
I think that it's a pervasive belief that people who do this and who like create the work that you love just have it within them, like they just
Yeah.
materialize it, or
You're
like it's just
born a
easier.
star.
Exactly. It's like I think even about like the color work that people refer to so much now. I was terrible at color. I could not understand it. If you look at my really old work, you see that my work was very like dark in terms of like values and just lacking in all color.
Mm-hmm.
And the color that I create now was as a result of just actively trying to learn and understand what it was, what I liked, how it worked, how it yeah, how the beautiful effects that I saw in other people's work were created. So I guess my point is you can learn, right? Like don't feel
It's a skill.
that
Skills are learned.
yeah, skills are learned, exactly. Like don't feel like it's some inherent um inability, I don't think. I mean, I'm not saying that there aren't people who grasp things faster. Most certainly some things come more easily to other people. But I feel like the real defining factor in achieving what you're trying to do with your skills is the perseverance to figure out your learning style and what's not clicking and to push and to therefore I don't know if I'm making any sense now. Let me say that again. I feel like the defining factor in succeeding at doing something that doesn't feel necessarily intuitive to you is really just resilience and persistence in figuring out what works for you, because I think that's another thing that we miss so much in schooling is our learning styles are so important. A lot of people can't absorb information in the same way as other people, and that leads them to believe, or leads us to believe, that we are simply incapable of learning something. I'm sorry, I'm going on tangents here, but I remember trying to learn, back to the academy, trying to learn how to do HTML and CSS for the website. I spent years, I could not figure out how to understand what was happening. And it was only after finding the right learning style for that that I was able to finally understand in my own language mentally the principles of the thing I was trying to do. And now it's not difficult for me to grasp what's going on there. So I think that so much of that friction isn't an inability to learn. It's
Mm-hmm.
rather a lack of access to the right avenue to learn that thing.
Yep.
And I believe that you can discover that through perseverance and just trial and error and, consulting your peers, um, finding a combination of resources that can help you learn different
Mm-hmm.
aspects in different ways, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess my ultimate point here is that I really do believe that you can achieve what you're trying to achieve with um, perseverance and targeted
Resilience.
focus. Yeah.
Yep. There you go. Don't give up on being an artist because you're not the art kid.
Exactly. You don't have to be the art kid to be an artist.
There you go. Whew. Oh, and before we sign off, can you tell the good people where they can find your art online?
Oh, sure. So I have my website, my portfolio website at artofedge.com, and I'm on Instagram and Twitter at artofedge, and I'm also on Patreon now, also Art of Edge. So yeah, if you want to see like behind the scenes things and I share like my ramblings and time lapse videos, I'm trying to have fun on there, so I'm hoping that we can all have fun as we move along. But yeah, if you're interested in that, then that's on patreon.com/Art of Edge as well.
Edge as in EDGE.
Yes.
The edge of the table. Oh my
Is that?
god, this is an old joke that we have
joke.
5 years, a 5-year-old joke.
Slapping the knees.
Okay, and just before we sign off, I just want to tell you that we are working at the day of this recording. We are working on an illustrated book called Painted Earth, and Edge is one of our featured artists. So you can see Vancouver through her eyes, and the book is going to be very soon on Kickstarter, if it's not right now. So as the day of this recording, it will be very soon. Yes. You can find a link for that book and more information on the post related to this episode at etcherlab.com/edge, EDGE. And that's it.
Excited.
Edge told us how the movie Final Fantasy, The Spirits Within, were a catalyst for her art career. What about you? What movie, game, or event steered your passion for art? Please let us know in the comments section at etcherlab.com/edge. That's etchrlab.com/EDGE. Like the podcast? Help us support the show by subscribing and giving us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts at etcherlab.com/go/Apple. See you in the next episode, and until then, let's make more art.